This video is already out. Amazing World of Gumball, Grieving, made by Mr. Creepypasta. Well, let's do this. Oh, dang it.
I'm so proud of the man Michael has become. He's mature, he's approaching 30, he knows what he wants out of life. Alright, perfect.
Here we go.
It was my favorite channel to watch. Today it has some good shows, like Adventure Time, regular show. One of the newest shows on the network, The Amazing World of Gumball, is a pretty cute, mildly entertaining show. Not really my cup of tea. It's a little immature, but my little brother seems to like it a lot. And one day, I was watching Adult Swim and I realized I'd been up so late, I hadn't even kept track of time. It was already 4 a.m.
Man, I stay up longer than you. Then I stay up longer than that.
When it ended, a little bumper showed up at the bottom of the screen during a commercial break and said that a special episode of The Amazing World of Gumball was about to come on. I was a little confused about an episode of a very popular new show coming on this early, but I was bored and decided I would watch it, thinking it might come on later in the day, so I could spoil it for my brother. Sort of mean, I know. The flashy and energetic intro theme played, and although it was played a little differently than I recall, the music was a little different, and the show's logo wasn't animated. Its colors were done rather sloppily as well, almost like something a little kid would do on a doodle board or a glow board. How you doing? Assuming that it was done just for this special episode. The title of the episode was The Grieving. Sort of sad title, but I didn't really pay too much attention. It began with Gumball, the show's 12-year-old protagonist, standing alone facing a corner of his dimly lit classroom. He looked absolutely miserable, a far cry from the cheerful demeanor he usually had. There was no one else in the room, not even his best friend and adopted brother Darwin the goldfish. And the windows in the room clearly showed the night sky outside. I was really starting to get confused. Why would he be at school at night? Why was he standing in the corner all sad and alone?
Maybe he got
After about what seemed like a
attention.
minute of Gumball standing somberly in the corner, the scene suddenly changed. We were in Gumball's house. Once again, the scene is silent and a little disquieting. Richard, Gumball's enormous rabbit father, walks in from the kitchen, and he looked even more miserable than Gumball had in the previous scene. Richard isn't wearing his usual attire. He's dressed in a fancy black suit, a little uncharacteristic of him as he's usually a slob. He sighs and slumps down on the sofa, starts sobbing intensely, sounding like someone who just lost something important. I was starting to get a little creeped out. It was the silly, fun cartoon that I usually looked forward to watching with my younger brother. This was something completely different. I was beginning to think that this might have been something the creators did as an experiment or something, a test of the animation or sound perhaps. So it couldn't have been aside from the opening. But it was still different from the final shows. The episode had been much quieter than it usually was, only the subtle sounds and very little music, and the animation was not anything to write home about either. It was done a bit like an amateur Flash on Newgrounds. The character design was somewhat sloppy and rushed looking, and the real-life backgrounds used for the show looked different. As confused and somewhat frightened as I was for some reason, I kept watching it. Poor Richard was still sobbing on the sofa as the front door opened suddenly, making me jump a bit at such a loud noise, and Gumball's mother Nicole, a blue cat like him, stepped in. Like Richard, she wasn't wearing her usual outfit. For some reason, she was in a black dress, and was wearing a pretty black hat to match. Nicole sat down on the couch to comfort her husband, although she was looking a bit saddened herself. By this point, Richard's crying had begun to get more pained and miserable sounding. This wasn't the normal cartoon crying on the show. This was realistic and almost depressing crying. I almost felt like sobbing myself. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the sad scene at home ended, as it shifted back to the school. We weren't in Gumball's classroom this time. We were in Principal Brown's office. Nicole and Richard were there in their usual clothes, looking more normal and happy than they had before, but still slightly worried. Principal Brown, however, looked extremely sad. He quietly and somberly informed them of their children. Aeneas and Darwin were not present after lunch earlier that day.
I just thought my 51st birthday would be more than a
They hadn't been seen at all the rest of the day.
Because my 15th birthday.
Nicole was suddenly furious at him. She began spouting various insults and calls at him that I don't think would have made it on a more mature program like a regular show. I was laughing at this because it seemed sort of funny for Nicole to flip out in this manner and start swearing like a sailor in a G-rated cartoon, but my outlook soon changed when Principal Brown told her something else, after she finally had quieted down. His eyes began to tear up as he informed them. They eventually were found, but they had not been found alive.
Yeah, that is what I'm looking for.
He then went into graphic and nearly nauseating detail describing how their bodies were found, their parents sitting in utter shock. I could hardly believe what was happening. How could such a cheery and fun kids show be taking such a dark and twisted turn? I was considering turning the television off, but I was too scared.
I'm also scared of the dark too.
Nearly frozen by fear and disturbed intensely at the terrible things that he was saying.
I'm entitled to take the time that I need. I am entitled to take the time that I need.
Another flashback.
Because what happened to me and my family.
The scene was earlier that day.
And
in the animation, the scene was even worse than earlier. They said it was very uncharacteristic of both Darwin and Aeneas to go skipping school like delinquents. Darwin was a little naive and a bit ditzy, but he was a good kid, and wouldn't have dreamed of doing something like that. And Aeneas was even less likely to run away. She was a straight-A student, despite being only 4, which also troubled the police, seeing as a defenseless 4-year-old girl was missing, as well as an older boy. The school had been thoroughly checked.
Looks like Darwin and
So the police started to search the heavily wooded area outside of the school. It took little time for the police to discover the horrifying fate of Aeneas. In a small clearing outside of the school,
sorry for yawning.
You likely would have expected something like that to be shown in a show's cutesy art style, but it was nothing like that at all. Realistic blood covered the box inside and out, while her head was done in a normal style. It was drenched in blood and some other fluids. Not all of them hers, apparently. There was a note in the box, seemingly written in her blood. It was never stated during the episode what exactly was written on the note, but apparently led to the rest of her remains, and Darwin's heavily mutilated corpse. What I remember most about this scene was how out of place it seemed.
Let me turn it up
All
so
the
you,
blood and
if you
gore
can't hear it.
from Darwin and Aeneas' slaughtered and dismembered remains were done in a very realistic and disturbing way. It looked like the scene had been taken from a crime scene photograph done by professionals, not something from a cartoon. The way the scene was animated was different from most of the show as well. You may know that characters from the series are done in vastly differing animation styles, from flash animation to CGI, and I think that there's even a character done by somebody putting their chin upside down to make a face. This particular scene wasn't like anything I'd ever seen in the show before. Every little detail on Darwin's face was clearly illustrated. He looked like a little like a zombie. His face was very pale. His eyes had been gouged out by someone. Aeneas fared no better, or what was left of her anyway. Her stomach had been torn open. Her intestines were strewn around the trees and bushes in the woods. And once again in a very morbid and realistic style. I was feeling very ill by the time this incredibly disturbing flashback had come to an end. So I quickly ran to the bathroom to vomit. I was feeling better after upchucking, so I had realized I had good timing and had run to the bathroom during a commercial. It was then that I noticed that the show had been running twice as long. It usually ran for 11 minutes, but this episode was running for about 30.
Wow.
By then, I was wondering if there was any
I would
information
film
on
it,
the grieving on
but
IMDb or
can't film
something,
it.
so while the
Even I
commercials were
didn't
still
even have
playing,
my
I looked
YouTube
up some
channel
information
yet.
about the episode on Google. Nothing came up.
Nothing came up?
No information remotely similar to the plot or name of this episode existed anywhere.
Nowhere.
No. Incredibly scared and wondering if anyone else was watching, I quickly dialed my brother Larry and asked him to turn to Cartoon Network to see if he was seeing the same shit that I was. He was pretty mad that I woke him up at this hour. But he's a nice guy. He told me that he would see for me. I thanked him and stayed on the line as the show came back from commercial break. The scene had thankfully panned away from the horrific sights of the mutilated children and was back to the principal's office. I asked Larry if he saw some cartoon animals talking or crying, since that's what they were doing on my TV, and to my surprise, he said that he saw nothing like that. Instead, it was a rerun of an old Looney Tunes short. In an utter shock, I dropped the phone and ran over to the TV to turn it off. As hard as I pressed the button, it would not let me shut it off at all. I tried every single button, and none of them did a thing. I tried unplugging the whole thing as well. Nothing worked.
Well, the TV must have been
The TV
cursed.
stayed on no matter what. Larry had hung up, assuming that I was playing a joke or something, I guess. I was alone once again. My door was locked from the outside somehow, and the door to my bathroom was now locked as well. It seemed that I had no choice but to call the police, since my other family members were gone that night. It's the reason I could stay up so late after watching Adult Swim in the first place. When I hurriedly dialed the phone, I got no response. I was very scared. I had no choice but to finish the episode. I turned on all the lights in my room, got under the covers, hiding like my little brother does when I make him watch scary movies with me. I'd apparently missed a bit, but Gumball's parents were still talking to Principal Brown, so not that much. Nicole was asking him if Gumball was alright. He looked slightly confused and shocked for a moment and explained to her that he thought Gumball was out sick today and he had spent the day at home by himself with the stomach bug. Nicole screamed and wailed while Richard quietly told him, in a very out-of-character voice, that they thought Gumball had gotten on the bus this morning.
Enjoy the video.
It just didn't seem that way. The police were called once again to search the building and the small forest outside. They had found him in Miss Simeon's class, hanging by a noose with a blood-covered knife behind him and blood covering his clothing. The episode ended with a shot of Gumball's dead body hanging there in the corner, fading to black. The credits rolled silently, not like the usual way Cartoon Network annoyingly airs a promo that squishes half the screen. Those credits rolled unusually slow, and they weren't that fun to watch either. A little creepy, just plain white text rolling on a black background. I only recognized the name of the creator of the show. The rest were people I'd never heard of. The copyright notice at the end said Copyright Cartoon Network Studios 2001, which was incredibly odd seeing as the show was new for 2011. After all that was over, the screen went to static for a split second, during which some incredibly creepy and shocking video clips were shown between static intervals. I can still remember them very clearly. The first was a picture of a person in a plague doctor outfit. Those always scared me for some reason. And the way the person in the suit was filmed was just as bad. A red light, something that freaked me out incredibly, was shown over the clip. The next was what seemed to be a video being played very quickly over and over again. A kitten's face being squashed by a woman wearing high heels. Which was strange because a so-called friend of mine was sent a picture yesterday of a cat being killed, similar to the kittens in the video. The last one was the one that disturbed me the most. It made me want to both cry and vomit my guts out. It was my little brother, or at least a small child who looked very similar to him, being shot right in the face by a person who looked like my father.
No.
You could clearly see the child's blood splatter on the wall. I began to sob uncontrollably after that traumatizing clip. So much so that I passed out. When I woke up, my door was unlocked. My television was turned off. I went to go call the police on the home phone in my kitchen and report that I'd seen some very disturbing things on TV, and that my door had been locked. When they arrived, they could find nothing like what I remembered from earlier this morning. My internet history had been cleared. They were angry at me, and just assumed that I had a bad nightmare, and I was sure that I hadn't. Thankfully, one of the officers felt bad for me and took me out to a small diner so I could recollect my thoughts. At the diner, I remembered that my family was out visiting my aunt, and they were supposed to be back by noon or so. It was already 11, so the officer and I drove back, only to find a whole squad of police cars and even some government agents at my house. They explained to me that my little brother was missing, and that my mother and father are major suspects. I was freaking out. I'm trying to tell them about the disturbing clip of the boy who looked like my brother being shot in the head, but they wouldn't listen. I stayed with my older brother, Larry, who wouldn't believe me either, still insisting that all he saw was an old Looney Tunes cartoon and nothing at all creepy or weird.
Well, I'll see you guys in part 2.